Jake Morrison stood at the bridge window watching the last transport ships leave Earth's surface. The planet below was burning. Orange flames covered what used to be New York, London, and Tokyo. Black smoke rose from the ruins of every major city. The Zephyrian Empire had finally come to finish what they started 300 years ago. Lisa Campbell ran up to him with a datapad in her hands. Her face was pale and her eyes were red from crying. She had been counting the evacuation numbers. For hours, the news was bad, very bad. "Commander, we have the final count," she said in a shaky voice. 47 million people made it to the ships. That's all we could save. Jake closed his eyes. 47 million out of 12 billion. The Zephyrians had been hunting humans across the galaxy for centuries. They destroyed every colony world that humans tried to build. Every time people thought they found a safe place, the alien ships would appear and turn the planet into ash. "How many ships do we have?" Jake asked. 17 vessels, sir. The biggest one is the New Dawn with 8 million people. The smallest has only 50,000. Jake nodded. 17 ships carrying the last of humanity. The Zephyrians had won. They had driven humans from world after world until there was nowhere left to run. Earth was the final target. Now it was gone too. The bridge crew worked quietly around them. Everyone knew this was the end of everything they had ever known. Tom Bradley was at the navigation console planning their escape route. Amy Watson was at communications trying to contact the other ships. Steve Collins was at the weapons station even though their guns were useless against Zephyrian technology. "Sir, we're getting reports from the other ships," Amy said. "Captain Kate Phillips on the Freedom says they're ready to jump. Captain Matt Johnson on the Liberty is having engine problems but should be ready in 10 minutes. Jake watched the last few shuttles dock with the New Dawn. Each one carried families who had lost everything. Children who would never see their home again. Parents who had watched their cities burn. These people were counting on him to keep them alive. "Where are we going, Commander?" Lisa asked. "The Kepler sector. There are reports of a safe zone there. Uninhabited systems where we might be able to hide." Lisa frowned. "Sir, what if it's another trap? The Zephyrians have used false safe zones before. They let people gather and then attack with everything they have." Jake knew she was right. The Zephyrians were smart. They had fooled humans many times before. But what choice did they have? They needed somewhere to go. Somewhere to rest and figure out what to do next. "It's our only option," Jake said. "We can't stay here. The Zephyrian fleet will be back soon to make sure Earth is completely dead." Dr. Helen Murphy approached from the science station. She had been studying Zephyrian attack patterns for years. Her research had helped some colonies survive a few extra months, but it was never enough. "Commander, I've been thinking about why they hunt us. Every other species in the galaxy either joined their empire or was completely destroyed. But they keep chasing us. Why don't they just kill us all at once?" Jake had wondered the same thing. The Zephyrians had the technology to destroy entire star systems. They could have wiped out humanity in a single massive attack. Instead, they chose to hunt them slowly, world by world. "Maybe they enjoy the hunt," Steve Collins said from his station. "Maybe we're just entertainment for them." "Or maybe they're afraid of something," Helen said. "Maybe they need to make sure we're really gone." Before Jake could respond, alarms started blaring. Amy's fingers flew over her controls as she tried to identify the threat. "Sir, I'm detecting Zephyrian ships coming out of hyperspace. 3 cruisers and a destroyer. They're heading straight for us." Jake felt his heart start racing. They were not ready to fight. The refugee ships were slow and barely armed. If the Zephyrians attacked now, millions of people would die. "All ships, this is Commander Morrison. Emergency jump to hyperspace. Execute escape plan Delta. Go now." The New Dawn's engines roared to life. Around them, the other refugee ships started their own jump preparations. Jake watched the tactical display as the Zephyrian ships got closer. They would have maybe 2 minutes before the aliens were in weapons range. "Jump drive charge, sir," Tom Bradley called out. All ships report ready, Commander, Amy added. Jake looked one last time at Earth, the planet where humans had lived for thousands of years, the world where his grandparents were born, the home he would never see again. Execute jump, he ordered. The stars stretched into lines of light as the refugee fleet escaped into hyperspace. Behind them, Earth continued to burn. Ahead of them lay the unknown. Jake Morrison and 47 million survivors were about to discover that running was no longer enough. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could imagine. 6 months had passed since the refugee fleet arrived at the Kepler 442 system. The planet below looked dead and cold. No atmosphere, no water, just gray rocks and endless dust. But it was far from any Zephyrian patrol routes. For now they were safe. Tom Bradley wiped sweat from his forehead as he guided the mining drill deeper into the planet's surface. The work was hard and dangerous. They needed metals to repair their ships and build new equipment. Every day he went down into the dark tunnels with his team, hoping to find something useful. "Tom, you need to see this," called out his partner Danny Clark from deeper in the tunnel. His voice echoed strangely in the narrow space. "I found something weird down here." Tom grabbed his flashlight and crawled through the tight passage. The rock walls were different here. Instead of rough stone, they were smooth and covered with strange patterns, lines and symbols that looked like they were carved by intelligent beings. "How deep are we?" Tom asked. "About 200 meters below the surface, but look at this wall. This isn't natural rock formation." Tom ran his hand over the smooth surface. The symbols glowed faintly when he touched them. His heart started beating faster. This was not human work. It was not Zephyrian either. He had seen their writing before. This was something else entirely. "Danny, get back to the surface. Contact Dr. Amy Watson right away. Tell her we found something she needs to see." 2 hours later, Amy Watson climbed down into the tunnel with her equipment. She was the best xenorchaeologist in the fleet. If anyone could figure out what they had found, it was her. She had studied alien cultures for 20 years before the Zephyrians destroyed her homeworld. "This is incredible," she whispered as she examined the symbols. "These markings are old. Very old, maybe millions of years. What do they say?" Tom asked. Amy pulled out her translation device and started scanning the symbols. The machine had databases of every known alien language, but it was having trouble with these markings. They were unlike anything in its memory banks. "I'm getting partial matches with several extinct civilizations. But this is different, more advanced. The mathematical concepts here are beyond anything I've seen before." She moved her scanner along the wall. More symbols appeared as the device's light revealed hidden sections. The patterns became more complex as they went deeper. Soon they found an opening that led to a larger chamber. "Tom, we need more people down here. This is bigger than we thought." Captain Steve Collins arrived with a security team an hour later. He was suspicious of everything they found. After 300 years of running from aliens, humans had learned to be careful about unknown technology. "Doctor, are you sure this is safe? We don't know who built this place. It could be dangerous." Amy was already inside the chamber, her equipment beeping and flashing as it analyzed the ancient structure. The room was huge, with walls covered in more symbols and strange machines that still hummed with power. "Steve, look at this." "These machines are still working after millions of years. The power source is something I've never seen before. It's incredibly advanced." She pointed to a large wall covered with what looked like star maps. The symbols showed the locations of planets and star systems. Some of the markings were moving, updating themselves in real time. "This is a map of the galaxy. But look at these red marks. They're spreading across the star systems like a disease." Tom studied the map closely. The red marks covered huge sections of space. They seemed to follow specific patterns, moving from system to system in organized waves. "Amy, do you think those red marks represent the Zephyrian Empire?" Amy nodded. Slowly, "I think so, but look at the dates. If I'm reading this correctly, these marks started appearing long before the Zephyrians began hunting humans. This species, whoever they were, was tracking the Zephyrian expansion for millions of years. She moved to another section of the wall where more symbols were carved. These looked different. More urgent, like warnings or instructions. I'm getting. Translations now. The computer is learning the language. Tom, this is unbelievable. This species called themselves the Architects. They built this place as a warning system. They were watching the Zephyrians destroy other civilizations. What happened to them? Steve asked. Amy continued working with her scanner. More text appeared on her screen as the translation software decoded the ancient language. According to this, the Zephyrians found them. The Architects were more advanced than any species the Zephyrians had encountered before. The war lasted for centuries. But in the end, the Architects were destroyed just like everyone else. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. If beings this advanced could not stop the Zephyrians, what hope did humans have? But wait, Amy said, her voice getting excited. There's more. The Architects didn't just leave warnings. They left something else. Plans, blueprints, technology designed specifically to fight the Zephyrians. She pointed to a section of the wall that was glowing brighter than the rest. Symbols and diagrams covered the surface. They looked like weapon designs and battle strategies. Tom, we need to get Commander Morrison down here immediately. The Architects may have given us the tools we need to finally fight back. Kate Phillips stood in front of the massive Architect machine, her hands shaking as she touched the control panel. The ancient technology had been waiting underground for millions of years. Now it was responding to her touch like it had been built for humans. The power levels are incredible, she said to Commander Morrison, who was watching from behind her. This single machine produces more energy than our entire fleet combined. Jake Morrison had brought his best engineers and scientists to the underground facility. For 3 weeks, they had been studying the Architect technology, trying to understand how it worked. The more they learned, the more amazed they became. Kate, can you activate the manufacturing systems? Jake asked. Kate nodded and pressed a sequence of symbols on the control panel. The machine hummed louder and lights began flashing. Along its surface, deep underground, other machines started working for the first time in millions of years. It's working, sir. The production lines are coming online. According to these readings, we can start making weapons and armor within hours. Dr. Helen Murphy was studying the weapon designs on another console. The Architect blueprints were incredibly detailed. Every component was explained with mathematical precision. Commander, these weapons are designed to bypass Zephyrian shielding technology. The Architects studied their enemies for centuries before creating these designs. She pointed to a diagram showing energy patterns that looked completely different from human or Zephyrian technology. The weapons used principles that neither species had discovered. The energy frequency is specifically tuned to disrupt Zephyrian defensive systems. Their shields will be useless against these weapons. Matt Johnson was examining the armor designs with equal amazement. The Architect combat suits were unlike anything humans had ever built. They were powered exoskeletons that could enhance human strength and speed by incredible amounts. These suits will make our soldiers 10 times stronger and faster. The armor can stop Zephyrian plasma weapons, and the built-in systems can track their ships even when they're cloaked. Jake felt hope growing in his chest for the first time in months. For 300 years, humans had been running because they could not fight back. Zephyrian technology was too advanced, their weapons too powerful, their ships too fast. How long before we can start production? He asked. Kate checked her readings. The first weapons should be ready in 6 hours. Combat suits will take longer. Maybe 2 days for the first batch? And ships? Jake asked. Amy Watson looked up from her translation work. She had been decoding the Architect's starship blueprints for days. The designs were more complex than anything she had ever seen. The ship designs are incredible, Commander. These vessels are built specifically for hunting Zephyrian fleets. They're fast, heavily armed, and nearly invisible to enemy sensors. She showed him a 3-dimensional hologram of an Architect warship. It was sleek and deadly looking, with weapon systems that could destroy targets at incredible distances. How long to build one? Jake asked. With the automated manufacturing systems, maybe 3 weeks for a small fighter, 2 months for a full battle cruiser. Jake did the math in his head. They had 17 refugee ships carrying 47 million people. The Zephyrians would eventually find them. When that happened, they needed to be ready to fight instead of run. Kate, I want you to start production immediately. Focus on weapons and armor first. We need to arm our people as quickly as possible. Yes, sir, I'll get the teams working right away. As the engineers began activating more manufacturing systems, something unexpected happened. The architect facility started responding to human thoughts and emotions. The machines seemed to understand what humans needed without being told. This is strange, said Tony Lewis, one of the technicians. The computers are anticipating my commands. It's like they're reading my mind. Helen Murphy had been studying this phenomenon for hours. I think the architects designed their technology to work with human neural patterns. They must have known we would find this place someday. But how could they know about humans millions of years ago? Jake asked. Amy looked up from her translation. Work with a serious expression. Commander, I've been reading their historical records. The architects weren't the first species the Zephyrians destroyed. They were just the most advanced. But according to these records, they studied all the previous victims. She pulled up more symbols on her screen. The architects believed that evolution would eventually produce a species capable of stopping the Zephyrians. A species that was adaptable, creative, and refused to give up even when facing impossible odds. You think they meant humans? Jake asked. I think they were waiting. For us, Commander? All of this technology, all of these weapons, they were designed for us to find and use. The facility continued to hum with activity as more systems came online. Production lines that had been silent for millions of years began manufacturing weapons that could pierce Zephyrian armor. Assembly systems started building combat suits that would make human soldiers into nearly unstoppable warriors. Commander, Kate called out from her station. The first batch of weapons is ready. We now have guns that can actually hurt the Zephyrians. Jake picked up one of the new weapons. It felt perfectly balanced in his hands, like it had been made specifically for him. The weapons display showed targeting information and energy levels, in symbols that somehow made sense to him. People, he said to everyone in the facility, for the first time in 300 years we have a chance to fight back. The architects have given us the tools we need. Now we need to learn how to use them. Admiral Paul Wright stood on the bridge of the newly built warship that humans had named the Architect's Revenge. The vessel was sleek and deadly, constructed using ancient blueprints that had waited millions of years to be found. 3 months of non-stop work had produced humanity's first real weapon of war. All stations report ready, Admiral, said Communications Officer Dana Lee. Her voice was steady, but Paul could hear the nervousness underneath. This was the first time humans had willingly sought out a fight with the Zephyrians in 300 years. Paul looked at the tactical display showing the Tau Ceti system. Intelligence reports indicated a medium-sized Zephyrian outpost there with maybe 20 ships and a few thousand alien soldiers. It was small enough to attack, but large enough to send a message to the entire Zephyrian Empire. Weapons status? Paul asked. All Architect weapon systems are online and fully charged, replied Lieutenant Gary Stone from the weapons console. The new plasma cannons are unlike anything we've ever had before. They should cut through Zephyrian shields like they're not even there, Paul nodded. The Architect weapons worked on principles that no one in the galaxy had seen before. The energy patterns were specifically designed to disrupt Zephyrian defensive technology. After centuries of being hunted, humans finally had tools that could fight back. Navigator, take us out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. I want to see what we're facing before we commit to the attack. The stars shifted as the Architect's Revenge dropped back into normal space. Immediately, the ship's sensors began scanning the Tau Ceti system. The results appeared on the main screen within seconds. Admiral, I'm reading 18 Zephyrian vessels in orbit around the fourth planet. Most are cruisers and destroyers. 1. Appears to be a command ship. Pol studied the enemy formation. The Zephyrians had arranged their ships in a defensive pattern around their base. It was a standard setup that had protected them from human attacks for centuries. But humans had never attacked with architect technology before. Signal the fleet, all ships move to attack formation. Remember, we want to test these weapons and gather intelligence. If things go badly, we retreat immediately. Behind the architects. Revenge, 5 smaller ships moved into position. They were not as advanced as the flagship, but they carried the same revolutionary weapons. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had lost everything to the Zephyrians. Admiral, the Zephyrians are scanning us, Dana reported. They're trying to identify our ships, but their sensors can't get a clear reading, Paul smiled. The architect's stealth technology was working perfectly. The enemy knew human ships were there, but they could not target them properly. It was like trying to hit shadows. Move us closer. I want to be within weapons range before they figure out what they're dealing with. The human fleet accelerated toward the Zephyrian formation. Paul watched the tactical display as the distance closed. 2 million kilometers, 1,500,000. The Zephyrians were still trying to get target locks on the human ships. Sir, they're powering up their weapons, Gary reported, but their targeting systems are having trouble. The architect technology is confusing their sensors. Good, that means we have the advantage. All ships, prepare to fire on my command. Pol watched the enemy ships struggle to aim their weapons. For 300 years, Zephyrian technology had been superior to human equipment. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses nearly impossible to penetrate. But the architects had studied the Zephyrians for millions of years. They knew every weakness. Admiral, we're in optimal firing range, Gary announced. Paul took a deep breath. This moment would either mark the beginning of humanity's comeback, or the end of their last hope. There was no middle ground. All ships, open fire. The space around Tau Ceti lit up with weapon beams unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The architect plasma cannons fired energy that seemed to bend space itself. The beams passed through Zephyrian shields like they were not there and struck the alien ships with devastating force. Direct hits on 6 enemy vessels, Gary reported, with amazement in his voice. Their shields are completely useless against our weapons. Pol watched the tactical display as Zephyrian ships began exploding. The aliens were trying to return fire, but their weapons could not lock onto the human ships. When they did manage to fire, their energy beams passed harmlessly through the architect defensive systems. Sir, the Zephyrians are trying to retreat, Dana reported. They're powering up their hyperspace drives. Don't let them escape. We need to capture some of their ships intact. We need information about their fleet movements and base locations. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. For the first time ever, human ships were hunting Zephyrian vessels instead of running from them. The ancient enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years was experiencing fear. Admiral, we've disabled 4 enemy ships. The rest are either destroyed or have jumped to hyperspace. Pol looked at the debris field where the Zephyrian outpost had been. 18 enemy ships had been reduced to 4 captures and the rest to wreckage. The human fleet had not taken a single casualty. Dana, send a message to Commander Morrison. Tell him the first strike was a complete success. The architect weapons worked better than we hoped. As the human fleet secured the captured Zephyrian ships, Pol realized that everything had changed. The hunters had become the hunted. After 300 years of running, humanity was finally fighting back. Commander Rick Thompson crouched behind a piece of rubble on the Zephyrian mining world of Vega Prime. His team of 12 soldiers wore the new architect combat suits that made them stronger and faster than any human had ever been. The mission was simple: destroy the Zephyrian supply depot and capture as many aliens alive as possible. Target the communication tower first, Rick whispered into his helmet radio. We need to cut off their ability to call for help. Sergeant Chris Adams nodded and aimed his architect rifle at the tall structure. The weapon charged with a soft humming sound. When he pulled the trigger, the energy beam sliced through the tower's supports like they were made of paper. The entire structure collapsed in seconds. "Communications are down, sir," Chris reported. "The Zephyrians inside the base are trapped." Rick smiled behind his helmet. For 300 years, humans had been the ones who were trapped and hunted. Now the tables were turning? The architect technology had given them abilities that the Zephyrians could not match. "Move in. Remember, we want prisoners. Command needs information about their fleet locations and defense plans." The human soldiers moved through the Zephyrian base like ghosts. Their suits made them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. The aliens inside had no idea they were being attacked until it was too late. Rick kicked down the door to the command center. 3 Zephyrian officers turned in surprise. These were the same creatures that had destroyed Earth and countless other human worlds. Now they looked scared and confused. "Surrender and you will not be harmed," Rick said in the Zephyrian language. All human soldiers had learned to speak the alien tongue during their years of running and hiding. One of the Zephyrians reached for his weapon. Chris Adams was faster. The architect rifle fired a stun blast that knocked the alien unconscious without killing him. The other 2 Zephyrians immediately raised their hands in surrender. "Please do not kill us," one of them said in broken human speech. "We are only soldiers following orders." Rick studied the alien's face. For the first time in his life, he was seeing fear in Zephyrian eyes. These creatures had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. They had never known what it felt like to be hunted. "You will come with us. You will answer our questions. If you cooperate, you will live." Captain Nancy Rodriguez was leading a similar mission 3 star systems away. Her specialty was deep strike operations behind enemy lines. The architect's stealth technology made her ships nearly impossible to detect. "We're approaching the Zephyrian supply convoy," her pilot reported. 5 cargo ships with 2 escort vessels. Nancy studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian convoy was carrying weapons and supplies to their forward bases. Destroying it would hurt their ability to fight back against the human offensive. "Remember, we want to capture the escort ships intact. We need their navigation computers to find more Zephyrian bases." The attack was swift and precise. The architect weapons disabled the escort ships without destroying them. The cargo vessels surrendered immediately when they realized they had no protection. "Ma'am, we're getting surrender signals from all enemy ships," the communications officer reported. "They're asking for mercy." Nancy had never heard Zephyrians ask for mercy before. Throughout history, they had shown no compassion for the species. They conquered. But now they were experiencing what their victims had felt for millions of years. "Accept their surrender, board the ships, and secure the crews. I want those navigation computers intact." Back on the hidden human base, Dr. Helen Murphy was interrogating captured Zephyrian officers. The aliens were more willing to talk than anyone had expected. The psychological impact of being hunted was breaking their will to fight. "Tell me about your homeworld," Helen asked the Zephyrian commander. "Where is it located?" The alien's eyes filled with what looked like tears. "You do not understand. We are not the real enemy. We are refugees just like you." Helen frowned. "What do you mean?" "Long ago our people lived on peaceful worlds. We were explorers and scientists. Then the Devourers came from beyond the galaxy. They consumed entire star systems, turning them into nothing but empty space." The Zephyrian commander's voice became quiet and sad. "The Devourers destroyed our homeworld. Billions of our people died. The survivors became nomads, moving from system to system, trying to stay ahead of the destruction." "But why did you attack other species?" Helen asked. "Why not work together against this common enemy?" "Fear," the commander replied. "When you are being hunted by something that can destroy planets, you become desperate. You take what you need to survive, even if it means hurting others." Helen realized that the galaxy's greatest predators were actually running from something even worse. The Zephyrians had been driven to desperation by creatures that made them look harmless. "Where are the Devourers now?" she asked. "They are coming back. Our long-range sensors detected their ships returning to this galaxy. They will be here within 50 years. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was reading reports from successful human raids across Zephyrian space. In just 6 months, human forces had destroyed dozens of enemy bases and captured hundreds of alien ships. The war was turning in humanity's favor. "Sir, we're getting reports that some Zephyrian colonies are asking to surrender without fighting," Lisa Campbell reported. "They're offering to share information about their military in exchange for protection," Jake nodded. The psychological warfare was working. The Zephyrians were learning what it felt like to be afraid. But he was also learning that the situation was more complicated than anyone had realized. "Lisa, bring me the reports from Dr. Murphy's interrogations. I think we need to understand what we're really fighting." President Gary Stone stood before the massive holographic display showing the Zephyrian home system. The alien homeworld was protected by defense stations that had kept it safe for millions of years. But those same defenses were originally built by the architects, and humans now understood how to control them. "Admiral Wright, are all ships in position?" Gary asked. Paul Wright nodded from the bridge of the Architect's Revenge. Around the Zephyrian system, a combined fleet of human and captured alien vessels waited for the final assault. But this would not be like the previous attacks. Today they came with an offer instead of just weapons. "All fleets report ready, Mr. President." "But sir, are you sure about this plan?" "We could destroy their homeworld completely, end the war with total victory." Gary looked at the intelligence reports from Dr. Helen Murphy's interrogations. The truth about the Zephyrians had changed everything. They were not evil conquerors, but desperate refugees running from something far worse. "No, Admiral. Total victory means nothing if we all die when the real enemy arrives. We need allies, not more enemies." Susan Clark, the newly appointed general of human forces, stepped forward. She had been studying the architect records about the Devourers for weeks. The information was terrifying. "Mr. President, the architect databases show that the Devourers destroyed entire civilizations across 3 galaxies. They consume all matter and energy in star systems, leaving nothing but empty space behind." Gary nodded grimly. "How long before they reach this galaxy?" "According to Zephyrian long-range sensors, 47 years, maybe less." On the main screen, the Zephyrian homeworld appeared as a blue and green sphere surrounded by artificial defense platforms. Millions of aliens lived on that world, including families and children who had never participated in the war against humans. "Open communication channels to the Zephyrian High Command," Gary ordered. Dana Lee worked at her console for several minutes. "Sir, I'm getting a response. The Zephyrian Supreme Leader wants to speak with you directly." The holographic display changed to show the interior of an alien command center. A tall Zephyrian with silver markings on his skin stood before the camera. This was Supreme Leader Kazak, the individual who had ordered the destruction of Earth. "Human leader," Kazak said in accented but clear human speech, "you have come to destroy our homeworld as we destroyed yours. We understand. We accept our fate." Gary was surprised by the alien's resigned tone. There was no anger or defiance, just tired acceptance. "Supreme Leader Kazak, I have not come to destroy your world. I have come with an offer." Kazak's large eyes widened in surprise. "An offer? What could humans possibly offer us? You have already defeated our fleets across the galaxy." "Survival," Gary replied simply. "We know about the Devourers. We know why your people became nomads. We know that you have been running from them for millions of years." The Zephyrian leader was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with sadness. "Yes, the Devourers destroyed our original homeworld when I was young. My people have been refugees ever since. We took what we needed to survive, even if it meant causing pain to others. We became monsters to avoid extinction." Gary stepped closer to the holographic projector. "You don't have to be monsters anymore. The architects left us technology that can fight the devourers. But it will take both our species working together to have any chance of stopping them. Why would you help us after everything we have done? To your people? Because extinction helps no one. Because we learned from the architects that division makes everyone weak. Because 47 years is not much time to prepare for the greatest threat this galaxy has ever faced. Kazak looked at something off-screen, probably consulting with his advisors. When he turned back, there was hope in his alien features for the first time. What do you propose? Gary activated another holographic display showing the architect database about devourer tactics and technology. Complete technological sharing, joint military command, unified defense of critical star systems, and most importantly, the construction of weapons that can actually hurt the devourers. The architects tried to fight them and failed. The architects fought alone. They had advanced technology, but they were only one species. Together, humans and Zephyrians might have capabilities that neither could achieve separately. Admiral Wright interrupted from his ship. Mr. President, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the defense platforms around the Zephyrian homeworld. But they're not powering up weapons. They're shutting down their shields. Gary looked at Kazak with surprise. Supreme Leader, if we are to be allies, then we must trust each other. I am ordering all our defenses to stand down. Your ships may approach our world safely. Over the next several hours, human and Zephyrian representatives met on the surface of the alien homeworld. The Treaty of Unity was signed in a ceremony that was broadcast across both civilizations. For the first time in galactic history, two species that had been enemies agreed to combine their knowledge and resources against a common threat. Jake Morrison, now Admiral of the Combined Fleet, stood with Kazak looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the devourers were coming. But for the first time in millions of years, they would face unified resistance. Admiral Morrison, Kazak said, my people have a saying. The darkness seems absolute until someone lights the first fire. Jake nodded. My people have a similar saying. It's always darkest before the dawn. Above them, human and Zephyrian ships worked together to build the first joint defense stations. The hunters and the hunted had become allies. The real war was about to begin.